Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great 2023 so far. Nice wet one this morning, so I hope everyone was safe driving if you were on the road. John Kulo, our section secretary and education chair, is stuck on the road at the moment, so I'm going to take the lead on this, and hopefully he'll be joining us in a few minutes. But I want to start by introducing our guest this morning, Mr. Mike Riggs. Mike is the creator of the One Way Golf Mental Fitness Program. One Way Golf is a best practices model obtained from and used by many of the world's best players. Mike earned a master's degree in sport and performance psychology from the University of Virginia, Charlottesville, studying directly under the renowned Dr. Bob Rotella. Mike has spent the last 3 decades guiding players from junior golfers to touring professionals to play and compete to their full potential. Mike has found that inside each player is the capacity to play extraordinary. Often, all that may be necessary is a firm nudge, some trusty guidance, and a clear-cut plan. Mike, we're really excited that you're joining us this morning, so I'll hand this over to you. Those of you that are on with us, just remember, if you do have any questions for Mike, type them into the chat, and we will get to those when appropriate. So, Mike, I'll let you take it from here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Nikki. And thank you to everyone for making the time this morning to spend some time together. I want to really share some ideas, concepts that I have learned and continue to learn over the years, both as a player myself and then as a student, and now as a practitioner in the area of sports psychology or golf mental fitness training for over 30 years now. And so in doing so, I wholly encourage you to use the concepts, the ideas that I'm going to share with you today. I know that very often as instructors, the mental portion of the game, which is infused into pretty much everything that you do as a teacher, there's questions that come up. It's natural, it's normal. And a lot of times I know that instructors don't necessarily have the background or the skills to really answer them too thoroughly. But if you can pull snippets from what I'm going to share with you over the next 30 or so minutes, feel free to do so. I'm not protective, quite the contrary. What I really endeavor with the entire one-way concept, the program, is to share ideas, to share best practices. So that being said, what I'd like to do is I'm going to go through the program platform itself. As you see on the screen in front of you, it says the one-way S-squared formula. Well, I'm sure for those of you who have poked your eyes onto that, said, well, S-squared, well, what do you mean by that? Well, everything that I'm going to share today is what I call a best practices model. I have studied the mind through my academic studies. I've worked with players, as was mentioned, for many decades. And the best of the best, and when I say the best of the best, I'm not necessarily saying just those who are winning majors, playing on tour, making their living with their golf clubs. But it's also players who are at the collegiate level or high school level or junior level or the country club level. They're playing their best golf. What I've found is that they are what we refer to as S-squared. What are the S's? Well, the first S stands for success, right? They really are endeavoring and they're playing golf to their ability, right? So on any given day, they can say, yes, I'm successful with what I'm doing with the game. And they can genuinely say that and mean that. But the second S is satisfaction. And what I found, and I think this is really important, is that all the success in the world, again, regardless level of play, all the success in the world can be very, very empty for a player unless it is coupled with satisfaction, which is the second S. And satisfaction is really just a genuine feeling that, hey, you know what? I'm putting my time and effort into this. I'm working hard. I'm taking lessons. which is absolutely a key component to playing successful golf, is having a good, solid, reproducible swing. My fitness is good, if not great. You know, I'm flexible. My body can do what I need to do without pain. So the fitness portion is there. My equipment is adequate. I've been fitted. I've got the right stuff to do what I need to do on the golf course from an equipment standpoint. So the satisfaction piece is critical in that they can say, you know what, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm getting fulfillment out of this thing, this game, this competitive thing called golf. So when the success piece and the satisfaction piece are married, that's what we refer to as S squared. It's not just S plus S, but there's something really magical that happens when success and satisfaction come together. That's when the player really, really is playing their best and enjoying themselves. I'm going to just, regarding the satisfaction piece, I'm going to just share a quick story here. David Duvall, the name most of you recognize, now he's a commentator, obviously, but at the peak of his game, he was ranked #1 in the world with Tiger Woods. They were going neck and neck for a while. And the story goes, on the way back from the other side of the pond with the claret jug in his lap flying, he was in tears. And it was presumed, and he shared this story later, so it's not a private story. He shared years later that the tears weren't so much this sense of accomplishment, like finally, I've achieved everything I've endeavored my entire life. It was that he didn't feel the joy and the satisfaction at the level that he thought he was going to, having won the event. And I use that only as an example. Now, most of our one-way golfers are not going to play at that level. But it's critical that the player recognizes that throughout all the training, the preparation, and the competition, that the fulfillment factor, the satisfaction must be present. So that's what we refer to as squared. Now, a formula is a system, it's a platform, it's a process. And the best of the best, those who are playing at S squared players, they truly recognize and they employ this regularly, the formula. They know that they have to think certain ways, behave certain ways, react certain ways, do certain things in preparation and in competition in a very systematic way. So when we refer to the one-way S squared formula, we're talking about success and satisfaction, that's the goal, and following a plan. Because haphazardness or trying a little of this, a little of that, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work over the long haul. So that's what we're going to share with you this morning. So the first step in one way is an acronym. So it's ONE. Again, I want you to think of everything that I'm going to say, I'm saying with you this morning, think of it as a best practices model. This information I have gathered from the best of the best, and I employ it with my clients on a regular basis. So it's field tested. So the first step, the O in one way, is that S squared players, successful and satisfied players, they take a high degree of ownership of their game, and they're extremely well organized. So what does this mean? All right, when we talk about ownership, at the end of the day, the player needs to be able to say and agree with themselves and say, you know what, this is my game at the deepest of levels. Yes, I may be playing, say, for example, if a lot of you instruct junior players, and of course the parents are involved, and maybe the high school coach or their swing coach, they're involved in their game, and they have other players, team members that are part of this, or this thing called golf for them. But at the end of the day, they have to recognize that, you know what, I'm playing for myself. Now, it doesn't mean it's narcissistic or selfish in any way, other than they truly own that. They own their game, all the way up the ladder to the best players on the planet. It's their game. Now, they have a team, might be a team of one other person or a large team, which I'll touch on in a few moments in terms of their formula. But at the end of the day, again, it's about ownership. It's about them taking it on and saying, this is my game. They're also extremely well organized. We all know, and this may apply to some of you, who are just very physically skilled and gifted with your clubs. Great hand-eye coordination, very smooth swing, just natural. But what I found is that all the talent in the world will only get you so far. There's going to be a point in time in competition where a player very probably or possibly with lesser skill or talent beats you. Well, why is that? What we found is that organization, in other words, doing things in a logical way, in a manner where it's making sense and things build upon themselves to the end goal of playing to the best of your ability. They have to be well organized, systematic. So how do players find this sense of ownership and organization? Well, this is what we refer to as an O loop, or an ownership and organization loop. The first step in this process is always, right, what do I want? And being able to answer that question. Now, this can be at a shot-by-shot level. It can be at a round level. It can be employed going into every lesson. It can be a practice session, etc. So, but the ability to say, yes, in my mind's eye, or written down, even better yet, of what I'm trying to accomplish, it's clear to me. Some of you are in offices right now as we speak. Well, when you left your home to where you are today, seeing as you know where you were going, you probably didn't use your GPS, but you had a way of getting there. Take this road to this road, get on the highway, get on the off-ramp, into the parking lot, etc. So when you are going somewhere, it only behooves you to know where it is that you're going. So the clearer you can make that to yourself, right, then the odds of you getting there are much increased, right? So step one of an O loop is always saying, what do I really want? The second step is why. Now, I personally feel, and I think this is validated on a regular basis with my clients, is that the why, right, is the glue that holds this O loop together. The why is the reason, it's the passion, it's the purpose for wanting what it is that you want. So you have a vision in your mind of what you're trying to achieve, but knowing a deeper why, okay? And again, it can be, this isn't intended to be just shot by shot, but it certainly is. So if I see in my mind's eye what shot I'm trying to hit and what club I need to hit and other adjustments I may have to make in my swing, I know why I am doing that. I know what it is and why I want it. So if we increase this why all the way to the broadest level of why am I playing the game of golf? Why am I endeavoring, trying to win my flight at my club? Or why am I trying to make the high school team? Or why am I, etc. So knowing why is the glue. It's really what holds it all together. And sometimes I refer to it as this, is that it's like the icing on the cake, in that you know what you want and you know how you're going to get it, but the why makes it all that much sweeter. It's the purpose, the reason. It gives you the satisfaction for your success. So the third step then of an O loop is what we call the how, right? Or our ways. Organization, as I touched on, okay? You may know what you want. Your player may know what you want. Shot by shot, practice by practice, etc. They're locked into why. So they got the first two steps in place, which is fantastic. It's necessary. But they don't know how they're going to do that. Well, without a plan, and how is simply a plan, a simple plan. Simple plans are best plans. Without a plan, they will find themselves sometimes panicked, sometimes extremely nervous or anxious, because they don't know how they're going to accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish with the club in hand or in the game of golf. So having a strategy or a plan becomes absolutely vital. It cannot be left out. We as instructors, All right, we need to recognize this, and I think ask them regularly. So you know what you want, and you know why you want that. Now, how are you going to accomplish that? And let them tell you how they're going to accomplish it. And you'll be able to tell pretty easily whether or not they're organized if they know how they're going to do what it is that they achieved or inspire themselves to do. So this is what we refer to as an O loop, which is the O in one way. Also throughout this morning, if you have questions, feel free to, and I'm not seeing the questions, but feel free to send them to the moderator so that either Nikki or John can then ask those questions in real time, because I really want you to end this morning, the time we spend, really with some great knowledge, something you can apply. And by asking a question, then I can address that. The N in one way represents environment. And no, it's not a typo, but one way has to be spelled O-N-E, so therefore we've done it this way. Environment. Now we break out environment into two separate concepts. I'm going to start with what we call our outer environment. I touched on a little bit earlier about a team. So depending on the level of play, you've got a team, you've got people around you. And outer environment somewhat refers to that, is that really S-squared players playing to their ability level, recognize how critical, how vital the outer environment is to their achieving success and satisfaction. So it's the makeup of the external physical and human environments. Now, what do we mean by physical environments? Well, it's the practice facility. It's where they go to learn. It's where they go to practice, where they get better as players. And so the quality, and it could be a tin cup facility. That's fine. Everyone doesn't have the funds or the means to play at a Pebble Beach or a high-end country club, which is fine. But the physical environment recognizes that the ownership, the people that run these facilities recognize that, hey, you know what? We've got players here who are really trying to get better, and they do what they can to make that environment such so that they can really improve in that regard. We talk about human environments. Basically, it's the people, okay? The best of the best, okay? Again, they've told me this. They are very, very specific about what people they surround themselves with. One of my clients, who's also a high-level golfer, but also a businessman, owns a number of companies. And he told me pretty point blank during one of our coaching calls. He says, Mike, I surround myself with winners. Period. And this is essentially what we're talking about in terms of outer environment in the humans, the people that we choose. It's critical to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who want to get better. And the flip side of that coin is that if you look at your outer environment and you recognize that there's a lot of liabilities that are holding you back, dragging you down, pulling you off course, changing your attitude, et cetera, not in a positive way, well, it makes sense for you. It's your responsibility to then kind of just snip those people out of the environment. Trying to change them might be a lost cause, but we need to recognize that. So create an incredible outer environment for yourself as a player. The inner environment concept is this. There's 29 specific attributes, which may sound like a lot, but over the years, we've narrowed it down from many more than 29 of successful and satisfied players. And the building, this is from the inside out, the building of these, the solidifying of these attributes for these players is really the foundation of what's going to allow them to play to the best of their ability and find fulfillment in that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to share with you another document here that overviews these 29 attributes. Now, with the time we have today, obviously we can't go through all of them, but I just want to give you, I'm going to hand select a few of them and just share with you how important each of these are at playing S-squared golf. Well, the foundational attribute here, my cursor is self-awareness. And when we say foundation, imagine building a house. You got to pour a slab, you got to pour the concrete. It's got to be solid. Well, what we found is that the players whose foundation is self-awareness, is that they really recognize their strengths and their weaknesses, they have a solid foundation. Those who are less than willing, I might say delusional in terms of what their strengths and weaknesses are, those are the ones who typically just kind of keep hiccuping and maybe get a little better, but then fall back. It's one of those one step forward, one step back or worse situations. So self-awareness is very, very important. The framework. So now we've got the foundation board of this building, this house, this player. The framework, think of it as the four corner posts that are, so in each corner of the frame of the foundation is a corner post. And this is what we refer to as the framework. Now, these are interesting. And I still, again, this is my formula brought to me by some of the best players in the world over years and years and years and years. And I still sometimes shake my head and I say, wow, is it that important? Well, the framework, being grateful, generous, self-esteeming, and optimistic, is it that important? Well, yes, it is. And this is the reason why. Because if you really think about each of those four attributes, grateful, generous, self-esteeming, and optimistic, they help to create a sense of self, a being, a way of thinking, a total entirety of who they are that can get into the flow state. Sometimes players ask me, so Mike, at the end of the day, we strip everything away. What are we really trying to accomplish through one-way golf? And my answer is clear. It's simple. It's to become more present. As in right here, right now. Because when a player can be present with what they're doing, they're able to find that flow state where the best will come out of their body, the best will come out of their mind, their swing will be smooth. They'll play their best golf. Now, being grateful, generous, self-esteeming, and optimistic, it sets the stage for this flow state or this ability to be present. That's why these are so critical. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll on past the framework into the balance of the attributes we refer to as fixtures, the finishing elements of becoming an S-squared player. And as you can see here, they all apply to golf: sensible, creative, adaptable, ambitious, persistent. I'm going to take one here, patient, which is very typical of players, especially high-achieving players, really driven people and players, is they want things to happen now. You've probably experienced time over in lessons that you give where you teach something, you work on an adjustment or a change, whether it be more fundamental or just a little bit more superficial. And yet the player is expecting perfect ball strike, perfect ball flight. Everything's supposed to be working right now during that lesson, and they aren't patient about the improvement process. Well, the best of the best, S-squared players, they are. They recognize that, you know what, things don't happen immediately, and they shouldn't happen immediately. Instead, they put themselves in the process. They put them ownership again. They put themselves right in the center of this process and being able to say, you know what, it's not going to happen overnight. All right. But my vision, okay, the OLOOP, how my vision of what I want to achieve is clear. It's in my mind. I know what I want to achieve. And I recognize that this change, this improvement in my swing is part of that. And I'm going to be patient with it. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to quit easily on this. So patience is a very important element I found with golfers. Let's pick another one here that I think might be okay. Here, now this again, they're all fantastic and they're all necessary, but loyal, right where my cursor's at now. Well, loyal. Wait a minute. What does loyalty have to do with playing golf, right? Loyal. Well, it's this. For players that quit on themselves, and it happens, it's a self-talk issue. They literally quit on themselves. They don't stay loyal. They stop believing in themselves or their processes, or their swing coach. You ever get blamed for a bad round of golf as an instructor? So loyalty to both self and others is absolutely critical. It means you don't quit. You stick with what you've developed as your plan, the people in your plan and the systems in your plan. So loyalty. The next one below it, forgiving. Well, boy, that's golfers and forgiveness. And you say, well, forgiving, well, why? Why is that so important? Well, when someone forgives, they literally let go. They stop holding on to something detrimental. And so for a player who's generally not a very forgiving person to others and themselves, well, they don't let go of mistakes. Right? Well, some of the best rounds of golf ever played, low 60s in competition, the player interviewed afterwards or asked, so you say, so, wow, what a fabulous round today. And they say, well, yeah, I think I hit about 6 really good shots. What are you talking about? 6 really good shots? You shot a 62 on Sunday or in your high school tryout, or it's like, but the truth of the matter is they didn't hit a lot of perfect shots. But when they didn't hit a perfect shot, they let it go and they move on to the next shot. They reload, go into an O loop. What am I trying to accomplish on this shot or this putt? Why? And now how am I going to do that? And they let it go, they forgive, and they allow themselves, they set themselves up for being present once again on each shot. So forgiveness. We have time for, let me just grab one more. Let's see here.
Hey, Mike, just to pause you there on
Sure.
On forgiveness. And once again, I apologize for being late. The weather in Southern California is atrocious out there today.
No worries.
In terms of forgiveness, many times a golfer will go through their routine of forgiving themselves, but they won't really let it go. They won't really forgive themselves. They're still stuck in that previous moment. Do you have a tool or two that you preach that helps them really let go, as opposed to just saying they're letting it go?
Yeah. Well, for those that say they're letting it go, but they're not really letting it go, what I have found is that they really don't. So they hit a shot. And again, depends on the quality, the level of the player. You know, it could be 5 yards off either direction or distance, or it could be 25, doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is that they didn't hit the shot that they envisioned. What I found is that they're saying, oh, that's okay, I'll let it go, I'll move on to the next shot. But they don't really believe it. Early on in working with a new player, I get right into their beliefs. Back to here, I'm going to scroll back up. The foundational element here, okay, is self-awareness, right? So they may be saying, oh, I'm not going to hit every shot perfectly. Therefore, I missed a shot, I'm going to let it go. But they really don't believe it. They think, you know what, I should be hitting this on the stick. I should make every putt, regardless of distance, but they don't believe it. So what I would recommend as a tool, okay, is when you recognize a player, either in a lesson or a playing lesson, that they're getting almost frustrated because they don't seem to be letting go of the previous swing. Just kind of stop, maybe even just take the club out of their hand, put it back in their bag, and just have a short conversation and say, why are you so frustrated? And try and get into say, what? It's like, I just hit 3 in a row or 5 in a row and they're all off target. What's going on? You say, yeah, but do you really believe that you should hit every one of those exactly where you're envisioning it to go? So dig a little bit deeper into their belief. Do they believe it? And it's amazing too, these aha moments, right? We've all either had them for ourselves as people and players, but also our students, where you just see the light goes on. It's like, yes, now I get it. It's like, wow. Well, when you can help a player get to the point where they can shift, a paradigm shift in something they really believe or don't believe, it's that aha moment. And so in this case, in terms of the belief that every one of my shots, putts, chips should be perfect, and then they shift to, well, you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, even Rotella's book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, right? When they get to that point and they realize that it doesn't have to be perfect, I can just move on. There's an aha moment in their game will significantly improve. It's like it'll change on the spot. So to answer your question there, John, is just have a brief conversation. Say, well, why do you think that? It's not practical. The best players in the world aren't perfect. And therefore, in order for you to allow yourself to play your best, you need to let it go and forgive yourself. Let go as well. So does that answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So again, because of time, we're not going to be able to hang on the inner environment attributes any longer. Maybe at the end, if there's one or two that somebody scribbled down on a notepad says, yeah, can you address this? We can. But what I'm going to go back to is I'm going to go back to the formula. So we've got inner environment, outer environment. Okay. Now the third, the E in one way, represents execution. Okay. And if you can see the smile on my face, but I love execution. I live in a world of execution, both professionally as well as personally. Is that execution means getting it done. Just get it done, And as a side note, I think more and more we are living in a general culture, but certainly a golf culture, where excuses are the formula. It's like it's always coming up with a reason why something can't get done. Well, execution isn't about coming up with the reason why it didn't get done. Execution is explaining why it did get done. And we have found that high-level players, and again, when I say high-level, don't immediately say tour winners, okay? It's still a junior player who finally breaks 80. They've been working so hard and they break 80. Or a lady who's trying to win her flight in a club and she's got a nemesis or two, always seems to beat her by a stroke or two, finally gets there. So it's players who are committed to getting better. It's about execution. So when we execute, what we're really talking about is getting it done. Now, how do we get it done? Well, there's 4 steps. All right. The first key component is commitment. Now, when we talk about commitment, we're really saying have a plan. Remember, O-N-E, the ownership and organization. The third step is the how or the plan. So create a plan and then commit to your plan. See, without commitment, we're going to be lost. I flat out know it, because that's where doubt creeps in. That's where uncertainty of what I'm really trying to accomplish creeps in. So the first C of execution is commitment. The second is confidence. Confidence is, you know what? I believe, okay, the belief in the ability. And that's the key word there, is ability. I really believe I have the ability to accomplish what I need to accomplish. Now, there's no way that without the confidence in the ability, right, that a player is going to move in the direction of execution, because it's going to break down. Once again, we're talking about belief in the ability. And this is really, and I think confidence is is misunderstood in many ways. When we talk about confidence, we're talking about their belief in their ability to accomplish something. And how do you improve that ability? You train more effectively, period. Prepare more effectively. That's the answer. The third is concentration. And this is about just locking in on the here and the now, not drifting, staying with, keeping your focus upon what it is that you need to keep it upon. If it's during a singular golf swing, it's what's the feel? What do I really need to feel in this putting stroke or this particular shot? What do I need to focus on? And staying focused and concentrated is a non-negotiable. And then the last C of execution is composure. Composure is really just about staying relaxed. Now, easier said than done, right? especially in duress situations of duress where it's a must hit shot or a must make putt. Composure is really enjoying staying focused on, gosh, I get to do this. This is something I love to do, and relaxing and keeping just calm. A lot of it's breathing related, but again, somewhat touching on what I said earlier to John, answering John's question about the belief system, is that most players, they lose their composure because they put the situation, and in their mind, their self-talk, the situation is bigger than life. It's a matter of life and death. I have to hit this fairway. I must improve in this manner. When the truth of the matter is, you really don't. It's not life and death. You'll recover, you'll move on, you'll hit the next shot, you'll move on to the next tournament, or whatever it may be. So believe that this is an enjoyable process. I'm present and enjoying what I'm doing. Stay composed. And then things like breathing, of course, can help out with that. And there's some other tools that we use to help maintain composure. So back to the E, it's about execution. So when you're working with your players, well, then address these 4 C's: commitment, confidence, concentration, and composure, and try to help them improve. So
Mike,
at this point,
how
yes.
important is it for a good player's caddy to know what his players' traits are? And
critical. You know, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because for some time now, meaning years, I've had in my mind, and if anybody wants to jump in on this idea, I'd love to speak with you more about it. But I would love to start running clinics for caddies, teaching them the one-way formula. Because for a caddy that spends so much time with a player, they need to know the rankings, the scores of this player and their attributes. Are they forgiving? Are they decisive? Are they loyal? Are they cooperative, et cetera? We refer to it as a lead C. So every person has what we call a lead C. So as in the letter C. One of these C's, commitment, confidence, concentration, and composure, tends to be a lead C. So that a player says, you know what, when I play with extreme confidence, I just know that my commitment, my concentration, and my composure are going to kind of fall along behind it. Almost like a mother duck and the 3 ducklings behind it. The mother duck moves along, and let's say that mother duck is commitment. Well, if the mother duck moves this direction, and I actually use these, I have some ducks that I use as an example with my clients, a little bit juvenile, but hey, sometimes you got to be that way, right? So the mother duck turns right. Well, what do the 3 ducklings do? They automatically follow the mother duck. So the C's are similar to that, in that when we can help a player to recognize that, yeah, confidence is my lead C, they can be confident, they can trust that commitment, concentration, and composure are going to follow along behind them, right? And maybe concentration is a lead C, right? So back to your question about caddies. Yes, I think it would be a lot of fun, for one, and it'd be really, really helpful for caddies who spend a lot of time with their players to really understand this, and then they could learn more about the formula to help their players to, with all of these concepts and ideas. Okay, so any other questions right now?
Yeah, there's a few here, Mike.
Sure.
How do you objectively measure and teach the various aspects of your model? How do you keep it objective?
Yes, great question, because we live in a data world, right? Analytics and data. People want to know, and more and more. I mean, there's some great programs out there. I'm sure a lot of you using it, a decade, et cetera, in terms of what is really happening with my golf ball on the golf course, right? On the front end of our program, and we've developed an entire website, a complete website. So when we take on a new client, they fill out a whole bunch of front end assessments. We call it a one-way profile. We also have, depending on the level of the program the client enrolls, they can select other people to fill out that profile for them as well. It's called a 360 profile. So they can choose 1, 2, or 3 other people that know them well. So if it's a player, it might be, let's say it's a junior player, well, it might be one of their parents, could be their swing coach, might be a high school coach, could be a competitor who also fills out the profile. So that now this, and it's about 65 statements that they answer in a Likert scale, strongly disagree through agree. And it all ties back to the concepts within one way. So that before we even start a program, I mean, literally meet face to face, we've gathered all this data, this information on the front end. So we can, as a coach, a one-way coach, I can pretty accurately pinpoint, say, hey, you know what, this particular player, they're disorganized. Well, that gives us something right away to start discussing and working on, helping them to become more organized within their thinking and their actions. Or it might be one of the attributes or the execution. You know what, their composure. They've told me flat out, and their competitor and their mom or dad who follows them and watches them play in these events says, you know what, my son or my daughter, they lose their composure regularly. And then you can look at their scorecard, you can almost just see exactly where they lose their composure because they go par, bogey, double, And so so to answer your question, on the front end of a one-way golf program, we gather all this information that helps direct the work, where we're going to spend our time with a particular player. Because there's some things that maybe they're very strong in. Well, why waste or spend the time on that if they're already strong in that area? Let's go for the areas where they can improve.
And so, Mike, kind of along the same lines, have you worked with younger players? And does your approach, how do you modify your coaching and messaging when working with younger players that aren't emotionally or they're less mature?
What I have found, and when I say younger players, I'm talking probably the youngest that is mature enough to really handle some of these ideas and concepts might be around maybe 10, 11 years old or so. And what I do is I really just kind of bring it down, not in a derogatory way, just bring it down to their level and start using examples and ideas that they can completely identify with. And another thing too, which I found effective, especially with younger players, is use these ideas and concepts in other areas of their life, school, family, friends, and talk about how important it is to be this or that, these concepts in other areas of their life, and discuss it. And then once they recognize it in a non-golf setting, then you can kind of piggyback it and jump in and connect it to a golf setting. So I guess the short answer to your question, or the question, is come down to their level, right? And just simplify how you word things and how you express to them and bring them into it. So your adults, they're right there. But this is certainly something that can be brought into a kid's consciousness, their level of understanding. I've done it for many, many, many years, high school players, junior players, and it's very applicable as well.
So when you talk about kids from age 10 to, let's say, 15 or 16, how does your approach? I mean, obviously, communicating with their parents is a big part of that as well. How do you approach their parents in terms of getting them to understand the coaching?
Well, it may be overgeneralized, but just communicate really well with them, and I understand the parent thing, and it's changed dramatically in the last 10, 15, 20 years in terms of their overall involvement. Some for the better, some maybe not for the better, but it is what it is, and you got to deal with it. So, but I think just communicating. So when their son or daughter, they take the front end assessments, and maybe at a later point in time, John, it's up to you. We could do another one where I'll show you a completed assessment. It'll make more sense. But when the player completes this front end, this one-way profile, and with the second profilers, their swing coach and maybe one of the parents, show that profile, all right, to the parents or with the parents on a call, and have the kid present. It can be done remotely, or it can be done in your office, whatever, depending on the situation. But so communicate with them and say, hey, you know what? Your son or daughter really strong in these areas. But these are the areas where we think we can put some time and effort in the benefit, both as a player and as a person. Okay, and parents love to hear that too, as a person. And it's authentic, it's genuine. We want your son or daughter to become a better person and a better player. So you share the assessment with them, and it becomes more clear what it is that you're going to be working on. And then throughout the program, and they run from anywhere from 3 months to a year long, depending on the level, of course, stay in touch with the parents and encourage them to stay in touch with you. I think that's critical too. Sometimes parents really feel afraid that they can't communicate. So invite them to stay connected and let them know that you want that and that you're also going to stay connected with them. See, that's what we're talking about here, John, is that's back to outer environment. It's the team, right? It's the people that this player surrounds themselves with. So the better the team, better the player will be.
Do you ever have to make recommendations to the parents on how they go about?
Sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, give me a specific example. I've got something popped into my head of what you might be referring to, but what do you mean?
I mean, like, parents that could be a little overbearing or set, create a great deal of pressure on their children to perform and, just micromanaging their development. How do you go about prescribing a course of action for the parents to get them to be a little more effective in letting their player develop?
Okay, well, the first part of my answer is, in most cases, the parents mean what's best. They genuinely do mean what's best for their kid. There are some who are out in left field, and they're gonna, no matter what you do, they're going to stay in left field, and you shake your head and go, "Oh my gosh," you feel sorry for the kid. What you really do is like, I really feel sorry for that kid. But let's address the ones that do mean well, but just are kind of on the fringe in terms of how they're acting and behaving with their kid, and they're really not helping their kid to improve. They're hurting them. Well, talk it over with the parents. Don't try not to tell them. Instead, ask them. So the old loop, what, why, how? What I found really effective is ask the parent or parents, say, so what do you really see for your daughter or your son 5 years into the future or 10 years in? So engage them in these concepts. So ask them what they want. So if they say, I'd like Johnny or Susie to play collegiately. Okay, that's fair. Okay, well, now because that's what they want, now when we start asking them to maybe back off in some areas, let their kid grow up and take more ownership of their game, they realize that their behavior and their ways are definitely directly connected to their son or daughter playing collegiately. So now they're vested, and you got a professional, a one-way coach, a trained one-way coach, telling them that, hey, you know what? Maybe you could or should do these things in order for your son or daughter to eventually play collegiately. I know that's a short answer, and I could spend a whole hour just on parents and how to deal with the parents of these kids, but time obviously doesn't allow today. So in short, bring them into the fold. Help them to recognize that they're part of the team and their influence is grand, it's significant, and try and help guide them to influence them as best their son or daughter in the best way they can.
Kind of on a more granular level, how do you approach a student that lacks the emotional intelligence and mistakes the use of their defense mechanisms as self-confidence or awareness?
A lot of big words there. See,
we got to thank Brian.
What I'm hearing there is, what do you do with a kid who's constantly making excuses? Is that what that?
Yeah, that's how I would interpret the question.
Okay,
it comes in from Brian Bishop.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
I kind of sifted my way through that one. Right. So look, what do you do in any situation with people that are constantly making excuses? You ask them, say, Well, are the excuses that you're making, or the reasons, because they're not excuses to them, they're reasons. That's your job as a coach, one-way golf coach, is to help them to shift their paradigm, their thinking, to turn their thinking to recognize their self-awareness that I'm really not giving reasons, and reasons are legitimate. Let's face it. You guys, a lot of people got stuck in the rain today. You know, you couldn't get to work because it was the highway was stuck. That's a reason. But there's a line between a reason and an excuse. And so helping this kid if you accomplish nothing with this player other than getting them to realize that there's a difference between an excuse and a reason, and move them from excuse to reason in their golf game and life, success. You know what I mean? So how do you do it? You have conversations, and you come up with examples in their life. So this particular round of golf, or this lesson, or this test in school, you didn't do as well as you wanted. Now, what are the reasons for it? And you get them to understand that, well, you know what? I'm really just making excuses. So you have conversations with them, but you do it in a very non-attacking way. You just do it in a fun way where they start to realize, and all of a sudden, bingo, aha, light goes on. And then you support them in all areas of the game. It's like, okay, this is the month of reasoning and not excuse making. And then you text them regularly, and they communicate back and forth, and you help them shift from excuse maker, blamer, to reasons and taking ownership over their school, their golf, their life. And then it's like, then the fire lights. It's really awesome. So I know I went off on a tangent there, but that's kind of how I handle it, at least conceptually.
No, thank you.
Sure. So I've got 53 after. I know we were only on for, what'd you say? You said about 45 minutes or so. So
Yeah.
Over?
Yeah,
Okay.
those are all the questions I have. And again, Mike, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and educating the section.
Absolutely.
Before
So
we,
if I may, I'm going to take literally 2 seconds here. I hope what you heard today was one, educational, that you can apply to your players. And I genuinely mean that. For those of you who would like to take the whole concept of mental fitness training to the next level as a career development tool, okay, I encourage you to go to our website, okay, and it's at the top here, you see the URL, it's wedevelopu.com/golfcoach. And you can read more about, because we're actively recruiting qualified individuals. What does qualified mean? You don't have to be a sports psychologist. I can teach you this, and I do all the training. So if you really want to take your instruction to the next level so that you're teaching swing very effectively, maybe if you're in the fitness world, you're also teaching that, but now you can legitimately, okay, and you can market it in such a way where I'm a one-way golf coach. I've been trained in this area, and you want to grow your business, you want to do something really new and interesting, and it is a lot of fun. I encourage you to go to the website, wedevelopu.com/golfcoach, and go to this page. There's a little video at the top of me, and you can watch that if you like. But at the bottom, you'll see a quick form. So just fill this form out, and then and click submit, and it'll come directly to our inbox. And then we'll reach out to you and touch base and just talk more and see where you're at and see if it's a good fit. We're endeavoring something truly extraordinary, and this is a ground level thing. Right? Mental fitness training from coast to coast is almost non-existent. Right? You can go online, you can watch a video, you can read a book, and a lot of instructors then feel as if, well, I got to do something. So when I address the mental side, so they go into their arsenal and then they use it. Well, I would love to have you in the team or on the team of one-way golf coaches so that now you can teach the swing and mental fitness training, build your business, and really just take your career to a whole nother level. So fill out the form, please reach out to me, and I'd love to have that conversation.
So thank you, Michael. As part of, there's been some questions here Mark Wilson actually reached out and asked if he can get the PDF of the presentation. With your permission, of course, when we send out the YouTube recording of today's Catalyst, I'll also attach the document, the 2 pieces of documentation that Mike went through this morning.
Absolutely. Well,
The
John,
website.
that's what I sent you yesterday.
Yes, sir.
So you're welcome to include that to the members. So the PDF of the one-way overview and then the list of the 29 attributes. Feel free to send that to your people.
Awesome. And
Nice.
for those PGA members that are on the live webcast this morning, you will receive 1 PDR credit for taking Mike's presentation. And Mike, again, thank you very much for coming on this morning. You got a quick, I know you studied under Bob Rotella. You got a quick story you're able to share with us about your time as his apprentice?
Not so much on the golf course with him, but when I went to UVA and when he was running the program at Virginia, I was in my mid-20s and I really recognized what a genius I was fortunate to be around, So and I'm a handy guy. I like fixing things, paint this, little plumbing fixing, whatever it may be. And so I would literally just invite myself over to his house and just kind of hang around. And I'd fix something up and then I'd stick around for dinner and just to be able to sit around and listen to him, just to absorb his concepts and philosophies, because they're so spot on and they're so simplistic in a real positive way, of course. So I just got the opportunity to hang around him and listen and take mental fitness training for what it is. And it's really about just know yourself, put together plans that work, don't get in your own way. So, not necessarily a story, but, that was my experience with Bob. And then often too, the phone would ring, hey, Mike, we're eating dinner, the phone would ring. It was Davis Love or, Tom Kite or, so a player would call and say, guys, I'll be back in a couple minutes. He'd be in the other room, mumbling something. And I'm sitting here going, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? So just a great guy. And I'm fortunate and blessed to have learned from him and take some of his ideas. And now we're taking it to the next level. And we're going coast to coast. And we'd love to have you on our team as a one-way golf coach.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Thanks, guys and gals.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Happy New Year. And we'll see you in 2 weeks on the 19th. Take care.